I'm Wayne Shepins, Chief Cyber Market Analyst at Cyber Risk Alliance, here to moderate a discussion focused on workforce development and the need for mission-oriented cybersecurity training. Joining me today is Technology Advancement Center's CEO, Greg Smith, who boasts decades of cybersecurity industry experience, including 5 successful startups in the space. Next, we have CTO, Greg Wessel, with a storied 40-year career as a technical leader at NSA and 10 years in the commercial industry where he's offered his subject matter expertise in cyber. Next, we have CIO Monty Mills, with over 20 years of active duty military service, including operational deployments, coupled with a decade of experience at Cyber Command and commercial critical infrastructure security. And finally, Senior Advisor Tim Teal, with 10 years of active duty and 2 years inactive reserve military service, including operational deployments. He spent over 2 decades at NSA and Cyber Command, focused on advanced network operations, and was instrumental in what is today known as the Cyber National Mission Force. Greg, kick us off with a bit of retrospection. The name Technology Advancement Center, or TAC, is still pretty new, despite the nonprofit existence since 2018. Walk us through the last year or so and how the vision for TAC has evolved.
Yeah, thanks so much, Wayne, and thanks for hosting the panel with my colleagues here. One of the things that we did as we were evolving through 2023 was we felt that our mission was broader than just cybersecurity. We do other things beyond cyber in the technology vein. And as cyber has started to evolve with artificial intelligence and quantum, we really felt that we needed to change the name to focus on these emerging technologies that really now are starting to combine with cybersecurity. That's one of the impetuses for us changing the name.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the infrastructure you have in the lab?
Yeah, absolutely. So today we have approximately 100,000 square feet. We have 2 facilities. The facility that we're sitting in right now has 75,000 square feet of collaboration space, lab space. We have offices upstairs for companies to come in and leverage the space that we have here. We also have a secret facility upstairs. Our other facility, which is located at BWI Airport, is a top secret collateral facility. It's approximately 25,000 square feet. Again, with a maker space, with collaboration space, with SCIF space. And again, focused on supporting the mission of the Department of Defense and other U.S. government agencies.
Real quick, though, if you wouldn't mind, let's talk a little bit about the lab infrastructure. So the setups that you have to provide some hands-on experience.
Yeah, we really believe that as we're training, the high schoolers, the middle schoolers, college students, as well as the military, we really feel that we need hands-on keyboard to defend and attack real-world equipment. So we have an entire city here that allows for our students to attack and defend infrastructure of a city. We're in the process of building an airport to do a very similar type of training curriculum. We also have done events around buildings and ports and hospitals. So again, what we're trying to do is, instead of learning in a virtual environment being taught by a classroom, allowing these students to actually attack and defend real-world critical infrastructure components that are used in the wild, so they get this hands-on training to know how to do it in the future.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for the recap, Greg. All right, so for our next question, I'm going to kind of go down the panel list here. I'm going to start with you, Tim. So if you wouldn't mind, keeping this thought of educational training, hands-on in your mindset, what do you think some of the most challenging cybersecurity or pressing cybersecurity concerns are for the U.S. today?
Yeah, so I'm going to say critical infrastructure is a huge area of concern, like as Greg pointed out, especially in regards to the training aspect of that. Having a real-world place for our soldiers, airmen, whomever, to help with their mission and get that real-world hands-on experience is invaluable. as
Awesome.
far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Monty, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one of the key things, and I think it's very prevalent in current media right now, is just the reality of threat acceleration being enabled by artificial intelligence. We're looking right now at all of the landscape across the threat environment, across our operational areas, being attacked, exploited by AI enabled capabilities even now. And that's just going to continue to accelerate.
Yeah, absolutely. AI is always a topic. In fact, I often go to these sessions with chief information security officers, and they literally cannot get through a panel without AI coming up. It's a major topic right now. Greg, how about your thoughts?
So one of the things that we need to start focusing on in this country is getting the young people involved more in the cyber and AI world. Most other countries in the world, they go to school to learn this stuff, and they try to get them educated quicker so that they can go in the workforce. If you go to the Middle East especially, and you go to Saudi Arabia or the UAE, they send their young people over here to learn from us, and then they already have jobs lined up to put them back in place. So a lot of the things we can do here at the TAC is get those people ready all the way from high school up through college to get them to go out in the workforce to become the cyber warriors that we're going to need in the future.
Awesome. Yeah. Greg, as CEO, do you have any other thoughts to add as well?
Well, I think that I agree with all three of the panelists here. One of the things that we're trying to focus on more and more is how do we get the young people into our facility to get that basic training? But our goal is how do we get them interested in STEM education earlier, right? There's so many unique capabilities that we and the ecosystem around us academically have that kids just aren't aware of. And we need to raise that awareness, get them interested in these type of careers. So as Greg said, we get those folks ready to go as soon as they graduate from community college, high school, or a 4-year university.
Absolutely.
And let me add something to that.
Go for it.
At the TAC, we do what we call Cyber Saturdays for high school students 4 times a year. Well, the last Cyber Saturday we had some high school students that said, we need something that's a little more advanced than what you're doing there. Can you do something to help us learn quicker? So we're going to trial a 2-hour session next week to get them hands-on to keyboards and learn from me and others in the TAC on higher level cybersecurity while they're still in, and I should say 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, but we actually have a 6th grader coming who's already been to 5 capture the flag events, so we got to get those kids now, get them involved. And so we're going to trial this next week and turn it into something that might be fruitful for a while.
And Wade, I'd like to add one more thing. While Greg mentioned the 4 Cyber Saturdays, we have partnered with Junior Achievement. So we have multiple high schools coming in here through JA. And we also are getting more active with Junior ROTC, right? So again, what we're trying to do is have much broader reach beyond these 4 sessions that we've traditionally had to reach more students. And we're going to continue to put more money behind this educational piece to ensure that our future cyber warriors are ready when they hit the streets for a job.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's exciting to hear because I'll tell you, when my kids were young and in high school, now they're in college and a little beyond, there just weren't that many opportunities for them. We knew about the space because we were in the space, but there's a lot of folks out there that just had no knowledge of it. They think of the traditional doctor, lawyer, teacher, which are all great fields, but they really weren't turned towards cybersecurity that often. So it's nice to hear that this stuff is happening. And to kind of play off that, Monty, what else can universities be doing? I know that they're doing a lot. They've started these programs, these Center of Academic Excellence certified by the NSA, and there's a lot of programs out there now that weren't before. But what else can they be doing?
Yeah, I think the key thing is right now in our academia, we're looking at information security programs being the main thrust of the education. And I also want to say the thought process, I'm bringing up the NSA CAA schools, is a great example of how we're looking at universities and tuning those programs towards cyber defense. That's a great first start. However, when we look at, like you mentioned, being a doctor and a nurse, that's something we understand. 2 to 4 years to become a nurse, 10 to 14 years to become a doctor. we're looking at the same level of technical knowledge need in this space, and our academia is not there to answer that question. What I think they can be done in the very near future is focus on the specializations of the cyber workforce to be able to identify the specific roles that we have in cyber and get that into academia as soon as possible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I believe to add in what Monty says, the colleges focus on computer science, and then they add 5 classes that say cyber stuff.
Yes.
And they're different across lots of colleges. You really have to get into master's programs, degrees at a lot of the CA schools that NSA blessed to get a full-blown cyber curriculum where you get hands-on to things. You go into a lab. I think that our universities are just a little bit behind on giving the right classes to people so that when we walk out with a 4-year degree that they can be ready to work.
Absolutely.
And Wayne, I'd like to add one more thing to that. I think while from an educational standpoint, we focus on math and computer science, but we need other folks, right, to support the mission. And you don't have to have a degree. Right. I think that's a really important thing. You can be on the spectrum, right, and just think like our adversaries think. And I don't think that we've leveraged that community well enough to bring some of those folks into the fold. But we also need people who can write. We need people who can speak. We need people who think differently, non-traditional thinkers, because that's how our adversaries are thinking. They understand how we teach today, but if we don't go to a non-traditional route with certain people in our workforce, we're not going to keep up.
Yeah.
I was going to add about the warfighter aspect. All great points. The warfighter aspect, our warfighters go to school and they learn, but I don't think they're going to get the kind of practical experience that Greg outlined in regards to seeing late-breaking innovative techniques and technologies that we have here. It's just not going to do it. They don't have that convenience, and they're on a very accelerated schedule to get through that class, get on station so they can get on mission.
Yeah, I'll add something else into what Greg said. In the world of cyber and AI, you need analysts. And analysts aren't normally computer science engineers and mathematicians. So you need to take people that can do good analysis, train them a little bit on the technical side, and then put them in with the technical people, because that's how you win the game. And I'll go back to my many years at NSA, and I started in 2001. We started hiring computer scientists and engineers to be analysts, because at the time we said cyber information is not normal information. And so different analysts are a big key. And I agree with you, Greg. Anybody can become an analyst if they can analyze data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you say that, Greg, as well, because I found that some of the best analysts when I was at NSA were folks that didn't have college degrees. They took on the mission after 9/11 because they wanted to contribute, and they became super experts and have left and started companies and made big impacts into the industry. So it's really interesting. Tim, can you talk a little bit more about the warfighter? Like, what types of experience are you seeing them come in with? And is it mostly folks that are enlisted? Are you talking about officers? What level are we talking about here?
So it varies from the very, not as educated. So, the junior enlisted all the way up to, let's say, the O5, the lieutenant colonels, the commanders in the Navy. It just varies. And some folks come in with some programming knowledge, most not. And so there's a real disparity between that training aspect. And I know you find it shocking, but each service does it differently as well. So the Navy trains differently than the Army, trains differently than the Air Force and the Marine Corps, and likewise to the Coast Guard. So they all kind of have their own way of doing this.
Do they have certifications or anything like that? Because I feel like that's something that's greatly needed. For example, if you are an engineer and you want to go work on nuclear aircraft carriers, you have a 2-year program where you go to Navy nuke school. It's very prescribed. You have to do all these various things to check all the boxes. You've got to get through oral boards, final exams, all these sorts of things by not just the Navy, but NAVSEA, all these different, the shipyard itself. So Are there programs like that? Is that something that we need to lean towards for cybersecurity?
So the short answer is no, that as far as I'm aware, that doesn't exist today. I would love to see that exist in the future. And I think at the TAC, we're working towards that, especially in the areas that we're talking about as it relates to these national security kind of things like critical infrastructure, right? That really matter.
Yeah.
And Wayne, I think Monty already said it. Colleges are starting to get more advanced and catching up to where we are. The military is on its way to doing that too, and we're here to try to help them do that.
Yeah.
I mean, to give them hands-on to things that they can't get when they're going through their 6 weeks of training.
I mean, Wayne, one of the things that we have developed here, and the Pentagon sort of threw this out to us, is there is no OT or operational technology certifications today. And the Pentagon has thrown that out to us as we need a certification program for operational technology to protect critical infrastructure. So we have developed that outline. And as we build out the lab space, that's going to be a key training component for that certification that we're developing.
Yeah.
Just to underpin that real fast, what Doug spoke about, the operational technology stuff is not necessarily cyber, and cyber necessarily doesn't talk to the operational technology, critical infrastructure folks. They're basically treated like two separate silos.
And one of the things that we do here at the TAC is we have the real equipment that runs in OT for operators to touch, to see, to program, to attack, rather than being in some virtual environment. And the nice thing is, though, we're starting to see some colleges come up with that. We're going to have a talk later on in next month from Texas A&M, and when we had a first chat with him about what he was going to talk about, he had OT boards with all the OT equipment like we have here. It was really refreshing to see that.
That's cool. So we've talked about a lot of different things, and it really highlights what we can kind of surmise is a skills gap, a cybersecurity skills gap across the board, whether that's within our military, within the commercial industry. However, the market is kind of changing and, flipping and flopping, and we're seeing layoffs in the cybersecurity space. So what's the connection there? Or is there something missing? I'll leave this up to the panel. Does someone have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think we continue to share that we have a massive skills gap and a massive employment issue in cybersecurity. So here in the state of Maryland, probably 35,000 open cybersecurity jobs, and across the country, over 1 million. I think what you're seeing is a funding cycle of companies, right, that have been funded. The funding environment now is shrinking, and what you're seeing is layoffs in those type of companies.
Got it.
Right? I think where we still have the need is on the defensive side of a bank, a hospital. They're the ones, the counties, especially in the state of Maryland, that's where we have the skills or the open employment opportunities. So I think that's really where you're seeing the layoffs coupled with the need.
Got it. Now that makes sense. And, there's all these vendors that are trying to develop software products that will help those institutions work with limited staff. But it's a challenge, right? I mean, in some instances, you need bodies. You need people that are able and capable of doing the hard work.
And I think one of the other challenges is 15 years ago, there might have been 40 companies in the state of Maryland, small startups that were cyber. Now there's 250 or more.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody is starting cyber companies to try to meet the demand for what industry is looking for.
Yes.
It's just they need to differentiate themselves in some way. And as Greg said, the funding was up 5 years ago. The funding is going down now. And so now it's having to pick and choose which of these companies is going to be able to fit the needs of what customers are asking for.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tim.
And make no mistake, I mean, just because we're automating a lot of these tools and capabilities does not negate the fact that we still need subject matter expertise in this field. Absolutely is required. You can use all the AI and ML but you still need a subject matter expert in the loop that helps to make those decisions.
Yeah, and I was going to add to the concept that when we talk about how the workforce is changing, right? These open jobs that we have out there, the needs that are required to meet those jobs. One of the challenges is we look at individuals being laid off of positions, they're immediately looking for like, where am I going to do my next job? And there aren't really good trade skill programs,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
To help people make those transitions in cyber yet. So we've spent a lot of time today talking about how universities and education can start to meet the need. I think there's also a clear need for that trade skill program to exist, not only for specific corporations, but at the specific individual level too. And that's got to be universal to help people make that transition, because all of this is going to continue to change. Technology is going to continue to rapidly evolve, and we need to have an education system, trade skill program that helps people make those transitions in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, apprenticeships is huge in the trades, right? Carpenters, plumbers, electricians, right? We've talked a lot about apprenticeships in the world of cybersecurity. We just haven't done it yet. And shame on us as a country to not do that, because there are plenty of opportunities where we need SOC operators and these basic entry-level positions that are perfect for a wide swath of our population. And as Monty said, we need to train up those folks in the trades themselves, right? And we just haven't done that yet. And I think that's a real opportunity for us as the state of Maryland and as a country to do that.
And I think that the thing that's missing is everybody, if you go out and look at the cyber job list, if you go out there, Looking Glass or something, everybody wants 3 or more years experience.
Yeah.
So what does that give anybody coming out of college? There's no chance for them to get those jobs, rather than say, this guy has skills, let's bring him in, train him up, and he meets that 3 years after he's trained up. We have to get back to where, whether we call it an apprenticeship or whether we do a job transfer, they need to start opening up, because looking for experience, people want it so they can fit it right in, rather than say, I'll train that person to keep them longer.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, there was an appetite for it, the apprenticeships, because if you follow the news recently, they just posted the 4 highest tuitions of college in the New England area were over $90,000 a year. What we've found is also that there is a drop right now in FAFSA applications. So less people are expecting to be going to college. But also, alternatively, there's been an increase or a spike just recently in folks applying to a trade apprenticeships. So that aligns. It's like the perfect time right now if we had something like this in place. So who ultimately is responsible for, ensuring that these folks are trained or ensuring that these programs exist? Is it the government? Is it industry? Is it a collaboration? Who's responsible?
I mean, I think it has to be a public-private partnership, right? I think the challenge that, at least at the state of Maryland level, is that apprenticeships have a stigma to it, right? It's, that means they're going to be a plumber or an electrician, right? We don't think of cyber. We think of cyber as a white-collar job, right? Whereas apprenticeships seem to have this stigma of a blue-collar job, right? At the end of the day, we need all people, right? We really do. And I think it has to be a public-private partnership with the school systems, with the government, as well as industry that's willing to take a risk at saying an apprentice is an okay thing, right?
Yeah.
There are great examples of companies in the state of Maryland where they have hired apprentices. They put them to work. They train them, so they're getting a wage. They're getting trained, and then they became really viable employees. Why we're not doing that as an entire industry is beyond me at this point. And it's something that we really need to, focus on in the future if we're going to be successful as a country, keeping our adversaries out.
Yeah, cool. I'm super excited whenever I hear anything with the, the lower levels, K through 12, when I hear, Girls at Code, different programs like that get youngsters excited and fired up about technology because it just didn't exist a while back. But as you've mentioned here and articulated, we haven't gone far enough and there's a lot more work to do.
Couldn't agree.
Yeah,
More.
and I want to add to that a little bit is if we go back in time in American history, the Morrill Act of 1862 was the foundation for STEM education for us. And that STEM education was focused on agriculture as a need to solve that problem, for us. And I think the same thing needs to happen with cyber, right? Government needs to take an active interest in pushing the agenda of cyber and information security as a core industry for the health of our nation. And then that coupled with the lower level conversations we had about, apprenticeships and what it means to be a specialist within this field are absolutely essential.
I mean, we are excited. We've hired a young woman from the University of Maryland, and she was a mentor for Girls for Coding, right? What a great opportunity to leverage her experience in that, to bring that expertise here to help get more younger people involved.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, and I was going to say, in my past, I had a naval officer that was a ship driver, jump into the cyber thing, and you'd be surprised what people could do if you just give them a chance and let them try. They really do rise to the occasion, and they will absolutely knock your socks off showing you that.
So what do you guys think about the cybersecurity market in general? Where is it going? Is it going to be as strong as it has been to date? What do you see?
Well, I in the cybersecurity market now, what we're seeing, especially with a lot of new companies that are starting up, they're all pushing toward AI. We're going to show you how we can build large language models that can do a lot that the analysts used to have to do to make their job quicker and easier for them to do. That's not an easy thing to do because we've never done it that way. We've always collected a bunch of data, let a bunch of analysts look at it, read it, decipher it, put it together. So it's a change and a shift in the way that we're going to be doing business with cyber, and the new market is going that way. You just have to be careful because people will come in and say, "We do AI. Look how fast this runs." That doesn't mean AI. You got to be looking at what they're doing with what they're calling machine learning and artificial intelligence. And that's one of the things that we're tackling here now is how to look at these cyber products with AI and ML and assess how they could be used by our government partners.
I mean, Wayne, I think we have an issue, right? I think we have phenomenal cybersecurity talent here. But if you think about our adversaries, right? Think about China and the amount of people that they have versus the amount of people we have. We probably have hundreds of people focused in one area of cybersecurity. They have 50,000 people focused on cybersecurity. They're taking their best kids in math and putting them into data analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence. And they're starting, they're picking these kids out when they're very young, in elementary school here. We're not even thinking about that, right? So I really feel that we've got to raise our game significantly to keep up with the Chinas, the Irans, the Russians, etc., or we're going to be highly vulnerable in the future. And at the end of the day, the four of us up here and this entire organization are focused on mission and protecting this country. And it's got to be an entire country effort, not just a select group of individuals, because China can throw massive bodies at this where we can't.
And think of this, Wayne, Greg hit it perfectly. How many people do we send to China to go to college? We don't. How many people does China send here to go to college? 250,000 or more even probably. How many people do we send to other countries? We don't. They all send their people here to get educated. Absolutely. So that there's a major problem when we see them sending all their young kids here to be educated to go back and become, I'll just say it, adversarials against the United States.
Sure.
We just don't do that.
It's the model. It's like the Olympic gymnastics model. They start the kids young and they program them and they win. They win the gold medal, right? and we struggle a lot of times in the Olympics. So it's the same thing. It's just education. It's completely a different field, but it's the same thing.
I'm also seeing a trend. The thing that we call cyber now, oriented towards this operational technology area, I think is going to increase over time and become a lot more important as we look at dams, energy, gas. No one was a real expert other than the vendor themselves, right? So over time, we're going to have to get really, really smart, really, really fast over these things, like now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The market continues to expand in that space as we watch OT and IT collide. I can say, even in my commercial experience recently, dealing with these large companies in critical infrastructure, the knowledge gap that they may have, even on their own systems and how it's implemented, is its own vulnerability compared to an adversary who's also actively trying to exploit that environment. And so the market need for people who are not only smart in cyber, but also smart in what we're calling OT today is something that with next 5 years is something we probably should focus on heavily.
And remember, in cyber, defense is the hard part.
Yep.
The offensive guy only needs one way in. The defense has to try to close every door in.
Back to critical infrastructure, when you look at it, there it only requires one opening. I mean, that's all you need in order to get in and exploit it. And so, you're playing a game of whack-a-mole constantly.
It's great to have you guys all on the panel. Greg, can you give us, some thoughts from your side as we leave and close out this session? What's important to you, and what do you want people to take away?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we're doing here at the TAC is we have what's called Small Business Wednesdays, when we're trying to bring small businesses in that are trying to make it in the cyber or the AI arena, and we bring them in to ask them, what do you need from us? What can we do for you? How can we get you in front of government customers? And we'll stay in contact with them because we're trying to promote them in a place that's really hard to get to.
Great. Thank you. Monty?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the maturing of our internship programs here at the TAC. Both unpaid and paid internship programs that help people while they're in school or even out of school trying to make that transition in the workforce. Come to the TAC, get that knowledge, valuable experience that they're not going to get anywhere else, things that they can put on their resume and carry forward into the workforce.
Great. Tim?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more of the agencies and Department of Defense entities, so military, civilian, whoever. Remember, we have a really amazing setup here. We've got lots of equipment. You'll get real-world hands-on. Please come over and visit us. We've got something to offer here for you that you've not seen before.
All right. Well, to wrap up our discussion, Greg, can you share what TAC's long-term objectives are for improving cybersecurity and where you plan to go in the next year or 5 years?
Yeah, I think that we're focused very much on the educational piece of cybersecurity. And that starts with the middle schoolers and it goes right up through the military, and, also training up people is, taking people that are looking for a different career and getting them trained in cyber. As I mentioned earlier, I think the operational technology is a green field for the entire country. We want to be the leaders in that. We're going to continue to invest in the lab space that we have with that real world equipment in a variety of different scenarios, whether it's an airport, a hospital, a building, it really doesn't matter. But anything that it is critical to the future of this country are things that we're going to be focused on.
Awesome. That's great. All right. Appreciate your time, everybody. It's been enjoyable speaking with you all, learning from you all. And it's Wayne Shepton signing off.